Hey there, drone fans. Rick here again from Drone Valley. Well, today is another incredibly exciting day for all of you technology nerds out there like me, because DJI has a brand new product launching on September 8th. Now, if you've ever bought anything from DJI, you're going to get an email typically 7 to 10 days before a new product is released just to drive you crazy. And those emails are incredibly intriguing because their marketing team is brilliant, where they send you information but don't really tell you anything. So when you open up the email, there's typically a picture that's a little out of focus, or maybe a really close-up shot of a part of the technology with a catchy tagline. And if you're like me, you're going to spend 7 to 10 days driving yourself nuts until they actually announce the product. Well, this morning an email showed up, and inside that email, all I saw was a box with a 5 inside of it with the tagline, "High Five." Now, I'm thinking to myself, because I had a lot of coffee, I'm thinking, okay, it could be anything. They make robots, they make gimbals, they make cameras, they make drones, they make a lot of cool technology, but I'm looking for a drone because it's been a dry summer for new releases on drones. So immediately I'm thinking, okay, High Five, it's got to be a follow-on to the Phantom 4. It's probably a Phantom 5. Wouldn't that be cool? It's not a Phantom 5, although I do believe we're going to see a Phantom 5. And I know a lot of people out there say, no, the Phantom product's dead. This is a really nice fixed airframe that they could use for new technology with a changeable camera and a whole lot of other things. So I still think we're going to see a Phantom 5, but this isn't a Phantom 5. Now, I have, as most nerds do, I've got trigger set on the FAA and FCC databases just to keep track of changes in the regulations, and more importantly, an FCC database to keep track of new products that are being submitted for approval by the FCC. And you might think to yourself, well, why does DJI have to talk to the FCC? They're a drone company that's regulated by the FAA. Well, the truth is, all technology, whether it's a drone or a camera, typically is using some type of broadcast technology. So if they're building a gimbal, stabilized gimbal, they're going to use Wi-Fi, maybe. They're going to use Bluetooth, maybe. Both of those have to be tested in a laboratory to make sure that they're within certain parameters that the FCC governs as safe for that particular bandwidth. So I guess about a week and a half ago, a new filing popped up on the FCC database for DJI. And they can blanket most of that sort of in NDA material, so they don't make it public, so you don't see any diagrams or manuals or any of that, even though they've tested all that stuff and vetted it. But the one thing they can't hide is the label. So unfortunately, I knew right away that we were going to see a new Osmo Mobile. Now, they're not calling it Osmo Mobile anymore. In the fourth version, they turned it into an OM4, but I think we're going to see an OM5. Matter of fact, I'm sure we're going to see an OM5 because the label says OM5 on it. So here's the OM4 that was out for the last model. And what DJI's done, and again, from an engineering perspective, man, this is a brilliant company because they're constantly making iterative changes to the last generation to improve it. So they're changing something to make it cooler in the next generation so that you'll say, you know what, I got the OM4, but this new OM5's got all these cool features in it, and I gotta get it, so let me sell this one and buy the OM5. So I'm racking my brain thinking, okay, as an engineer, this is a near perfect camera gimbal for your phone. It's near perfect. And when I say near perfect, I mean it does everything I need it to do. I've got a clamp that goes on my phone, which makes it really easy to attach it to the unit. I've got control from here. I've got long battery life. I can actually charge the camera from that. I've got all kinds of autonomous features built in. So what could they possibly do to the next generation, the OM5, to make me interested in that and seduce me to buy that particular product? Well, the honest answer is, I don't know. I don't know, because a lot of times I work pretty closely with DJI, and I'm lucky to be invited into a lot of NDA projects. And what that means is I get a product well before it's released. I sign this onerous NDA where I can't talk to anybody, even my wife, about what the product looks like. I have to test it in secret out in the field where nobody's around. Well, this one I wasn't invited into the NDA. So DJI, get me in those NDAs because I won't be able to talk about your products. But anyway, today, pure speculation. But again, as an engineer, I follow trends in technology. I test a lot of different products, a lot of different gear, so I can see things maturing in other spaces that I'm sure DJI is going to take advantage of here. So I'm going to talk about 4 things in particular that I am speculating. Again, it's all guesswork on my part, but I think educated guesswork of what the OM5 is going to look like. So for starters, I'm thinking size. I think it's going to be smaller for a couple of reasons. Number one, even though this works really well, technology's advanced pretty far beyond this in the size of the motors and the power of the motor. So the motors have gotten a lot more powerful and a lot smaller, and here's one example of that. So Power Vision is another company that I work with that builds pretty cool underwater drones. They built a couple of flying drones. The Power Egg is one of them. They came out with a camera gimbal for your phone that's way smaller, but what I'm showing you this for is because if you look at the motor size, look how tiny these motors are compared to these motors. So I think DJI certainly is on top of brushless motors. I'm sure they've got all the latest technology for the drivers and the ESCs that drive those motors. So I expect it's going to be smaller. The other reason I think it's going to be smaller is because when you look at that label, not only does it talk about it being an OM5, which is pretty much telling us what it's going to be, but right next to that is the battery size, 1,000 milliampere hours, which is way smaller than the OM4 because it had bigger motors that were sloppier and they drank a lot of electrons. So the fact that they're only putting a 1,000 milliampere hour battery into it means those motors have to be smaller, more efficient to handle those bigger phones going forward. So I think what you're going to see with the OM5, I'm going to say it's going to be pocket size because with this one, this folds up into such a tiny footprint that you can fit it in your pocket. And I can't believe that DJI, as brilliant as that company is, wouldn't have some way of making their stabilized gimbal for your cell phone small enough, I'm going to break this for sure because I'm rushing here, small enough to fit in your pocket. So that's the PowerVision version. By the way, this also does wireless charging. I'm going to do a full review of this on the channel, but back to the DJI OM5, that's what that one looks like. When I fold this one up, it's still way bigger than that. Yeah, you can jam it in your pocket if you got big puffy pockets, but this one slides right in your pocket. So it's going to be smaller. I think it's also going to be a lot more sophisticated as far as the motor control goes. One of the challenges they've had in the past is that these motors get hot over time, and the motors can transfer that heat to your phone. And if it's a hot day out, your phone's already getting hot. So if the motors transfer the heat to your phone can overheat, the motors can overheat. So I think efficiency and smaller in the motors. The next thing I think is going to happen, and this is from the diagram that was in there. So on the FCC listing, there were two diagrams for labels. One showed the actual label of the unit itself, which has the OM5 and the battery size in it. The other one was a circular label, and it kind of was a sketch. It looked like they had a picture of it that they kind of pixelated a little bit, so you couldn't tell exactly what it was. But if you look closely at that, and this has been pointed out by other websites as well, there's a shaft attached to that. So I think what you're going to see is you're going to see the separation of the gimbal, the mechanism gimbal itself, and the base by an extension rod. Probably a good size extension rod because as cool as this one is, I can only get it out that far without using a selfie stick on it. And I may want to get a better perspective of things behind me by extending it further out. I can't really do that. But imagine for a second if there was a way to unlatch this and separate this portion of it up through that extension rod to give me 3 feet away. Now I've got a beautiful perspective behind me, which means I'm going to get a lot better shots and I can do a lot more with it. So the second thing I think you're going to see is an extension rod between the gimbal assembly and the handle with still full control at the handle where you can do things with that gimbal up top. The third thing I put two up there, third thing you're going to see is an improved active track. Now, one of the things that blew me away with the OM4 over the original Osmo Mobile 3 was how much they improved active track. Now, if you haven't bought one of these gimbals before, active track is the functionality where the gimbal can look through the camera, it can zero in on an object, and then track that object. So you can put this thing on a tripod or sit it on a desk and move around, and it'll adjust the position of that phone to actually keep you in the center of that frame, which is absolutely incredible. It also can use hand signals to start recording and stop recording and all the rest of that. I think you're going to see the brand new Active Track 4.0, which is what I'm sure DJI is working on for their next generation of release for their new products that are coming out. So the Active Track 4.0 I think will be in there. And what's interesting about that Active Track is that they're using, to a certain extent, some machine learning and algorithms that get smarter over time. So it can differentiate not just from me as a person that I drew a box around, but it can recognize me, a dog, somebody on a bicycle, somebody on a motorcycle. So the intelligence built into the algorithm has gotten a lot smarter. And that's cool because a lot of people use these stabilized gimbals to track their kids or their dogs, and we're not all the same size. So tracking me and tracking a dog are completely different animals. So this will, I think, be a big improvement in the active track. And the last thing, which again blew me away last time, was they had a couple of features in there that were fun features. They were things that you could do with that you couldn't do naturally on your phone, like that clone me function, which I love. I think that's brilliant, where you can sort of put the gimbal down, it'll position itself into one section, it'll take a picture of you, you run to the middle, it takes another picture, you run to the right, it takes another picture, and it sews them together. So you can have like 4 ricks in a picture or 3 ricks in a picture, which is pretty scary, but it's a cool feature. I think they're trying to make it more fun for people to use it and get these beautiful shots without a whole lot of work. So I think the 4 things you're going to see are, number 1, a smaller version of it, because again, the battery's smaller, so everything's got to be smaller. Number 2, I think you're going to see an extension rod on it where you can put the head or the gimbal further away from the handle and still have that control. Third, I think you're going to see Active Track, the latest version of Active Track, whether it's 4 or 5, whatever they're up to now. And then finally, I expect a few more autonomous features in it that make it more fun to use it, right? Because these are out there, everybody's making one now. There's a ton of companies that make these, phone stabilized gimbal assemblies for your phone. DJI has always been on the leading edge of building in autonomy and fun features into their products, so I'm prepared to be surprised by this latest version of the OM5. And that's all I really had today. So I know there's a lot of other YouTubers out there speculating on what it's going to be. This is just my impression based on where they're at today, where I've seen other companies heading, and what I think is coming. So we'll all know in about a week's time, but I wanted to get this clip out quickly. I also wanted to get feedback from you guys. If you've got other things you've heard about it, or if you've got other speculation points you think are going to be built into it, drop those in the comments below and we can start a conversation. But I'll have one as soon as they're released. Again, I wish I was part of the NDA, but I wasn't this time, and I'm okay with that. So I'll order one the day it's released, the same as you guys will. I'll bring it in. I'll do a full review here on the channel like I've done with all the other Osmos that came out, and we can talk about it a little further then. And that's pretty much it for today. So I hope you found this clip helpful. I really enjoyed talking about this new technology. You can tell I'm really excited, probably a little bit based on the coffee that I've had today, but in general, I just love technology. So this kind of stuff gets me really jazzed. And that's it for today. So thanks again for watching, and until next time, happy flying!